Hello. Fights with Poems is a performance series I do in which I engage favorite poems of mine. I've engaged poems by Mary Oliver, Edna St. Vincent Millay, Theodore Roethke, William Butler Yeats, William Carlos Williams, Shel Silverstein, Donald Rumsfeld, that Donald Rumsfeld, and others. In engaging these and thinking about them and talking about them, I'm trying to illuminate for myself and for audiences like you what it is that fascinates me about poetry and has kept me fascinated for so many years. And also to shed light on the things that frustrate me and the places I struggle with the art form and why it's sometimes so exasperating. So tonight's Fights begins with one of my own compositions, an original poem which goes something like this. Here is a pen that would make James Bond jealous. The CompuFlash pen records up to 20 hours of audio through the built-in microphone, and the internal drive stores 8 gigabytes of data. That's 2,000 songs in MP3 format. It is also an FM radio. The discrete model lives up to its name, recording with no indication that it's running, no visible light. Of course, both pens write too. Recharge with the included USB cable. Ink refills available in blue and black. 5 3/4 inches long, 1.7 ounces, 1 year limited warranty. The CompuFlash pens, SKY115A, $119. Slash! Now, $79.99. I think. See, the people in back appreciate good poetry. You're right to applaud. That was actually already published. It appeared in the bastion of literary advancement known as Skymall catalog. I should ask, has anybody read that? Yes. It was picked up in their 2009 holiday issue. It ran for about 2.5 years, translated into 3 different languages that I know about. And although I wasn't able to put a byline on it, it was uncredited. I can safely say, or conservatively estimate, that it has been read by 1 million people, or at least hundreds of thousands of travelers worldwide, or at least nationwide. Now, in the other corner, there's a sonnet by William Shakespeare. Balls on this guy, right? So, Shakespeare's sonnet number 18, which goes something like this, goes exactly like this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of the fair thou owest, nor death shall brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. On behalf of William Shakespeare, I think. Now, there's no doubt that to write a sonnet, whether you're Shakespeare or a contemporary poet working on the form, it takes craft. It takes patience and attention and skill. Because unlike free verse, the only challenge is really figuring out when to stop, or how not to indulge yourself too much, where to edit. With a sonnet, as with any poetry form, villanelle or haiku or sestina, any poetry form is a recipe. So start with a sonnet. How long is a sonnet? I'm sure somebody here knows.
14 lines.
14 lines. I heard a couple places. Yeah, so everything you want to say, however deep you want to get, it has to fit into 14 lines. That's all you get. But now a Shakespearean sonnet has 10 syllables per line. Shakespeare is writing in a meter. Does anyone remember his meter?
Iambic pentameter.
Of course. Iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is 10 syllables. An iamb is 2 syllables. I love that there's an English word for a set of 2 syllables, in which the first one is unaccented, unstressed, and the second one is stressed. And spondy and trochee, right. I mean, it's amazing, right? There's this whole language describing pairs and triplets of syllables. I love English. So in a I am, it's unaccented and accented, like pizzazz would be a I am. Banana split. So that's 2 I ams. And then 5 of them is 10 syllables total. And it's not just 10 syllables, it's not just like writing haikus off the top of your head, but it has that musicality, that shall I compare thee to a summer's day. It has a lilt. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Temperate. So it's 14 lines, it's a rhythm, it's a certain number of syllables, and of course there's a rhyme too. Shakespeare had his own rhyme scheme. They rhyme like this in 3 sets, and then the last 2 lines rhyme. And all the classical sonneteers had their own rhyme scheme. Spenser had one, Marlowe had one, Petrarch. And even contemporary poets who work with the form try to kind of get some type of rhyme in there. So it's 14 lines, it's a rhyme, it's a rhythm, it's I said 14 lines. Now there's something else too that the really good sonnets have, and that's the turn, or the volta, I think that's what it's called. Now I know there's some scholars in the audience who have to really be on my game, but it's a turn. And basically what that is at line 9, a good sonnet will go in a new direction. It takes the subject and goes off in a new direction. It's line 9, that's like where you find out that she's really a man. You know? At line 9, if you look at Shakespeare's sonnets just one after another and go to the first word in line 9, he's always signaling that turn. It's like line 9, but, yet, but, still, be that as it may. That's not a pentameter, but you get the idea. So does that happen in sonnet 18? Well, of course it does. So in the first 8 lines, he's setting up what seems like flattery, or just sort of a game to play with his lover. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Saying she's more lovely, and she's more temperate, she's more even-keeled. Rough winds shake May, sometimes the sun's too hot, and it's unpredictable. And, it's an unpredictable type of weather, especially in England, I would imagine. Like, it's sunny, you go down to the beach, and it's cloudy. And he says, and it's raining in the middle of summer. Where else do we have that? Let me think. So, in Shakespeare's sonnet, he's talking about all the different ways where she is more temperate and even and more predictable. And he says, every fair from fair sometimes declines. In other words, every beauty declines from itself just by nature's changing course. So the beauty of a summer's day gives way to wind, the beauty of summer gives way to winter, and of course the beauty of winter gives way to summer. So every fair declines. And then we get to line 9. What do you think the first word of line 9 is? But, exactly. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of the fair thou owest, nor will you lose possession of your beauty that you possess. Nor death shall brag thou wanderest in his shade. You see, that's the turn. Line 9, we find out that Shakespeare's lover is a vampire. She will never get old. She will never lose her beauty. Nor death shall brag thou wanderest in his shade, when on the blood of humans ye do feast, and always stay out of the sunshine, and stay away from wooden stakes and I need one syllable. Never mind. I'm trying to say it's very Arabic pentameter. No. The point is, he actually missed the whole vampire thing by about 250 years. His loss. I think he would have done good stuff with it. But no, the point of Shakespeare is that she will never lose her beauty. She will never wander in death's shade when in eternal lines to time thou growest. In other words, in the lines of the poetry, that's where she lives. So the lines echo down through time, and that's where she is. So long as men, or so long as people can breathe, or eyes can see to read, then so long lives this poem. And this gives life to thee. So what starts out seeming to be a poem about flattery and kind of this, fun thing to do with your lover one day, turns into something quite different. It actually turns out not to be about the lover at all, but about the power of art and poetry to immortalize a thing of beauty forever. It's what we in the business call an ars poetica, which is a poem about the art of poetry. That's the turn. So good sonnet, 14 lines. Syllables, a rhythm, it's got a turn, it's got a rhyme scheme, and then, as if that weren't enough in the recipe, most sonnets, especially in Shakespeare's time, were written under the broad subjective topic of love. Now, on the other hand, the Skymall poem is easy to write. You just dash it out and you're done. No, 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 no. No, it's every bit as rigorous, rigid, and restrictive a form as the Shakespearean sonnet. And I will explain why. As we said, the Shakespearean sonnet has 14 lines. Now, the Skymall copy block is not measured in lines or syllables. It is 450 typewritten characters, including spaces and punctuation. I know, right? It's short. And on top of that, you have 6 to 12 words as a headline. That doesn't count to your total, but it's still there. It is tight space because Skymall doesn't sell. They don't sell plates. You can't just show a picture of the plate. Everyone knows what to do with a plate. Skymall's known for selling tchotchkes, which take time to explain what they are and why you would care. So 450 characters, which is about 80, 90 words, is not a lot of space. You know, they say in a poem, there's no such thing. You know, you cannot waste a word. In a Skymall poem, you cannot waste a character. Now, in a sonnet, there's this very specific order of the rhymes. Certain lines are going to rhyme with other lines. In the Skymall poem, the order of thought is critical. It is crucial to have the thoughts in the right order because you have to get somebody to start reading it and then continue reading it. So that first 6 to 12, it's true. Otherwise, the first 6 to 12 words, which is the headline, said in bold copy, 1 to 2 lines exactly, has to summarize the primary driving benefit of the product. Not what it is or what it has, but what it does for you. Not just what it does for you, but what it does for you on the lizard brain level. You know? So what is the benefit of a pen that records? It makes James Bond jealous, which is shorthand for it makes you feel cool. Because you walk into the conference room with a pen, and yet you're the coolest tech head in the conference room. And you're like, hey, John, how do you like my new pen? Oh, I like that pen. Oh, I like that pen. So it records. I mean, really, how many times are you going to use the thing? You know, before it winds up in a drawer. Or you lose it. It's a pen. You're going to lose the pen. But while you have it, you feel cool, which is shorthand for you feel attractive to your target mate set. That's what drives the sale of these things. Tech savvy and convenience, that's all second-tier benefits. The main thing is the cool aspect. And of course, by saying James Bond's name, I've dropped a hint about one of the icons of cool and somebody who's very attractive to his target mate set. And also mentioning James Bond is a cultural reference. It gives a hook. People want to see what James Bond's pen is going to do. You have to know, so you're going to read on. The copy has to be what we call wet. It has to be juicy. It can't be dry. It has to have pizzazz, banana split. It's got to have some kind of juice in there. There's another benefit from mentioning James Bond's name, which is that it brings up the idea of espionage. Because if you get this pen, you could record something that somebody doesn't want recorded, and then you have something over on them, which is another fundamental driver of human behavior on the lizard brain level. So here's a pen that would make James Bond jealous. 9 words. Encapsulates these primary benefits, the gut level benefits of being attractive, of having something over on somebody, and with that James Bond hook. Now we tuck into our 450 character middle part. There's no rhyme in here or rhythm. You try to avoid it because it sounds awkward if you accidentally get iambic pentameter in there. We have 3 or 4 sentences to summarize other things that the product does, other benefits, other features, the fact of the radio, also ways to beat the resistance. Because somebody might see it and say, well, I love a pen that records, but I'm supposed to like hold it up and like, talk into my pen. You know, no, you see, because the discrete model records with no indication that it's running, no visible light. So if somebody's resisting it, now they see that it actually really is a spy pen that works. So you beat some resistance, you talk about the other benefits, and I've bookended mine with a clever little tag, oh, of course they write too, which might be something that James Bond would say. Maybe. Then we tuck into the specifications section of the Skymall poem. It has to include what's included in the thing, replacement parts and repair parts, the dimensions, the weight, warranty information. It could include styles and colors available, country of origin, materials, any legal disclaimers. All these things, when they apply, have to appear in a very specific order. They have to be included in the same order. You've never put warranty before replacement parts. And all of that has to fit into 450 characters with punctuation and spaces. It's a lot to say in a little bit of space. And then, not counting to those 450 characters, you say the name of the product, the SKU number, the order number, and the price crossed out, and then the new price, the reduced price in red. So that's the format. Very specific to get people to read all the way through, and you don't pay off the dry stuff until the end. Now, there's no dramatic turn in a Skymall poem. There's no kind of dramatic. But there is a twist. And I have to explain the twist to you. I've written Skymall poems about, well, it was like a roll of cellophane that you take on the plane with you, and you wrap the service tray in it, right, so that you don't have to rest your paperback where some stranger put his sweaty, germ-ridden elbows on the flight before you. So for people who are afraid of contamination and germs, the benefit is avoiding those things, and it's very clear that's what it's about. I've written Skymall poems about special luggage, locks, alarms that will trigger and protect your luggage and your possessions from theft and from tampering. Again, playing to the benefit of avoidance of these things that people are afraid of. Oh, and then there's been ones about these neck pillows, of course, you know, so when you fall asleep, when you wake up, when you land, you're not so stiff that you can't even lift your carry-on. And of course, again, the benefit is avoiding pain. Fear of pain is what drives the sales. But now, here's the twist. Skymall Catalog pays the airline to put the magazine in their pocket and market to the flyers on that airline. Skymall carries it as a courtesy to the passenger, something to entertain them. And the last thing Skymall wants is for the last thing the airline wants is for anything in Skymall to suggest that the airline is dirty, that the airport is unsafe, or that the seats are uncomfortable. Therefore, no copy in a Skymall catalog, and believe me, there's a lot of products in there for the flyers, no copy can ever suggest that air travel is anything but sanitary, comfortable, perfectly convenient, safe, and secure. All these benefits have to be talked about without ever actually saying them. You can't say the word germs, pain, theft, terrorists. It's talking about something without ever talking about it. That's the twist, which is one of the things that makes it more like a poem. Prose. Finally, whereas the sonnets are written under the subject of love, the Skymall copy block is written under the subject of desire, specifically creating desire where it really doesn't have a way to self-spontaneously emerge. These are tchotchkes. It's not diamonds, it's not love, it's not comfort. They're things that you've always lived without. I'm just remembering now a copy block I wrote about. It was a 6.5-foot inflatable palm tree set. I have to get back to you what I did with that one. I don't remember. But the idea is to create desire. It has to create desire, and it has to create an effect so strong that it's not just, oh, that's interesting. Somebody has to actually do something. They have to call or click or fill out a form and part with money. And if it doesn't work, then Skymall, then CompuFlash company can't pay back their business loans, and they pull their ad from Skymall, and Skymall, if enough companies are doing that, then they can't pay the airlines, and it gets back to the agency, and it comes down to me. On the other hand, if I write a good Skymall poem, then I make jobs. I move the economy. Here's the bottom line. In 2 weeks of writing Skymall poetry, this is a conservative estimate. In 2 weeks, I net more than I have in a lifetime. 25 plus years of writing and publishing my poetry, selling it to journals, mimeographing it and selling it and Xeroxing it. I'm not even deducting from my MFA. I'm still in the red as far as I know. That's the bottom line. And that's where my fight with poems comes from. Now, I have to admit, it's a very cool thing to think that 400 years after Shakespeare wrote Sonnet 18, his lover's beauty is still immortalized in that poem, like he promised it would be. My eyes can see, I have breath, and I can read that and see her beauty. That's pretty cool. Not just attractive to your target mate said cool, but that's like awe-inspiring cool. And, of course, it's been read by a lot more than 1 million people and translated into more than 4 languages. And he got to sign his name. And I know that for me, my poems, the sonnets I've written, maybe have been read by, many dozen people. And I know from reports that I've made people cry with things I've written, which feels kind of, awe-inspiring. And speaking of attractive to your target mate set cool, I know that I've written poems shared with one other person that have gotten me laid. So, and I've written poems that have helped me get through the anxiety and grief and lostness of life. And even without that, I've written poems that have made me feel engaged and competent and creative and alive. And it's impossible to put a value on those things. So it's really apples to oranges. There's the marketing and the merchandising and writing to the base drives of human emotion. And there's some people that think that the minute art touches money, it becomes impure. And that's a struggle too. Because when I think about it, I know what I'd rather spend $1 on. What would you rather spend $1 on?